Welcome to 18th Century Cooking. I'm your host, John Townsend. Today we're going to be cooking some amazing beef ribs. Thanks for joining us today as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century. Roast beef cookery of the 18th century. It's classic, especially classic English cookery. You can find lots of different directions for that. Today I'm going to be working out of, this is Madame Johnson's Instructions for Young Women, 1755. There's a section of that book just on cooking that she calls the Cook Maid. The rules for roasting. Make your fire in the first place in proportion to the joint you dress, be what it will. But whether small or large, let it be clear and brisk. If your joint be larger than ordinary, which this one kind of is, take care to lay a good fire to cake. So we want lots of coals. When you imagine your meat half done, move the spit and the dripping pan some small distance from the fire, which you must then stir up and make it burn as brisk as you can. For observe, the quicker your fire, the better, the more expeditiously will your meat be roasted. And then right under that, there's to roast ribs of beef. That calls for a little special technique that I want to cover later on, but today we're going to be just using these generic roasting directions. We're going to be working on these ribs. Let's get started. So we don't want to use a spit with these ribs. It's really hard to get them to stick to a spit. So we're using our hanging meat hook. Perfect for this particular kind of cut that we want to hang up. We've also got a dripping pan here, and it does call for, in different parts of those directions as you read further on down, basting with water and salt, and of course the drippings that come off. If you need more moisture and you're concerned about that meat drying off, some of those recipes also add butter, even specifically on a ribs recipe, making sure you've got plenty of moisture there. You don't want them to dry out. I don't want this to cook too fast, so I'm not going to get this too close to the fire or build up the fire too quickly here at this beginning part. As she says in those directions, this first half of the cooking, kind of nice and low and slow. And then at the end, we'll build up that fire. We'll bring it a little bit closer. But right now we need space underneath anyway for this basting pan. We'll probably build this fire up with some little pieces right toward the end. So this piece of meat like this is a little bit challenging in this situation because it's going to want to cook on one side more than the other, and of course on the bottom more than the top. So we do have to occasionally take this off, rotate it around to keep the heat even on this. Pretty soon I'll probably flip it front to back. Also, we so have to keep the drippings whenever possible. This is an important part of the cooking process. This is the gravy. In 18th century terminology in the cookbooks, when they say, capture the gravy, talk about gravy, the meat drippings themselves, not what you do with them afterwards, but the meat drippings themselves are the gravy that comes from the meat. Sometimes you might even slit it to cause more of it to come out. We want to keep as much as possible because we want these to be, not dry. We want them to be as moist as possible. So we're capturing them. We also have a little bit of water down in this pan, and I've added some salt, and we'll baste these a few times to help bring this moisture back up to the top so we don't lose it. Well, here's our finished product. It smells amazing here in the cabin. It just, this wonderful ribs smell all over the cabin along with the firewood. Wow, it just doesn't get any better smell-wise, and it just looks amazing on that, in front of the fire. It's time to try this out. It came right off of the bone, easy. Cut it up into some little pieces here. Amazing beef flavor. So good, so good. Beef ribs like this are so good on the open fire. And cooked so simply. I mean, all you need to do is baste it every once in a while with this salt water and the gravy that comes off of that. And of course, if we were cooking a different dish, we would use that gravy and right here along with it, or we can store that gravy and keep it for tomorrow or next week because it's got so much wonderful flavor in it from these ribs. Such an easy, wonderful way to cook right here in the fireplace. So good. So here we are in the cabin and we have just the most simple tools to use, but it's perfect for this recipe. It is simple. It's just like what they would have been eating. And it is, basically you can't get any better than this. This is it. If you're interested in another ribs recipe, similar cooking technique, make sure to check out this Michael Twitty episode where he does barbecue.